Welcome to our deep dive into Sapiens, a brief history of humankind. This book is it's a big one covering, well, pretty much all of human history, but
It's a really ambitious undertaking.
it is, and we're here to break it down for you into the most fascinating parts, the things that will make you see the world and yourself in a whole new light.
Absolutely. What makes Harari's work so captivating is how he weaves together these grand narratives, connecting biology, history, even philosophy. It really pushes us to rethink what makes us human, how we got here, and where we might be going.
So let's start at the beginning and ready to go way, way back, like before Instagram and avocado toast.
Let's do it. Take us back to the Paleolithic, the pre-civilization era.
Okay, so picture this. It's the Stone Age.
Mm.
But it's not quite the Flintstones you might be imagining. Turns out Homo sapiens weren't the only humans around.
That's right.
We shared the planet with other human species, like Neanderthals and Denisovans. Can you imagine that family reunion?
It really challenges our perception of being at the top of the food chain, doesn't it? Harari dives into how at least 6 different human species coexisted until relatively recently.
So how did Homo sapiens become the dominant species? What happened there?
That's a question that's still being debated. One theory is the replacement theory, which suggests that Homo sapiens either outcompeted or even wiped out other human species.
Wow, so like a prehistoric reality show?
Kind of right. Through direct conflict or simply being better at securing resources, the result was the same. Homo sapiens were the last ones standing.
So kind of a brutal start to our history.
It does paint a picture of survival of the fittest. But there's another theory, the interbreeding theory, which suggests that Homo sapiens actually interbred with other human species. Over time, those lineages were absorbed into our own.
So maybe a bit less survival of the fittest and a bit more make love, not war.
Exactly. Current evidence suggests it was likely a combination of both. A bit of competition, a bit of mixing it up.
Wow, so our story's messy and complex right from the start.
That's the beauty of it.
But then there's this big idea that Harari talks about, imagined realities. What are those? And why should we care about them?
This is where things get really interesting. Imagined realities are things that don't exist in the physical world, but we as humans collectively believe in them, like
Yes.
nations' laws, money, even corporations.
Wait, so you're saying that my retirement fund is just an imagined reality?
Hmm?
Should I be worried?
Well, not exactly. It's more about recognizing that these things have power because we give them power. Take money, for instance. It's just paper, right? But we all agree it has value, so we use it to buy groceries, travel the world, even build empires.
So are you saying that our collective imagination is what shapes the world?
Absolutely. It's what allows us to cooperate on a large scale, build complex societies, and achieve incredible things. Harari compares modern lawyers to tribal shamans. Both are masters of manipulating these imagined realities.
I see what you mean. He uses a great example to explain this, the story of the Peugeot company. It started as a small mill, and now it's a global car manufacturer. But what really made them successful was their story, their brand, a powerful lion symbolizing strength.
It's a perfect example of a shared myth that fuels success. People aren't just buying a car, they're buying into an idea, an image.
So these imagined realities aren't inherently a bad thing.
Not at all. They're actually the foundation of our civilization, our cultures, our religions. The key is to be aware of them and to understand how they influence our thoughts and our actions. They can be used for both good and bad, to unite or divide.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Now we've mastered this collective belief thing. We're starting to move out of the caves and into, well, what exactly? What happens next in the Sapiens story?
Next, we dive into the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But forget those stereotypical images of loincloths and spear-wielding savages you see in movies. There's a lot more to it than that.
So no bowling alleys or drive-in theaters in the Stone Age?
Not quite. But they were deeply connected to nature. They knew how to track animals, identify edible plants, read the subtle signs of their environment. They were the ultimate survivalists in many ways.
But I always thought that they were constantly fighting to survive. That whole life was nasty, brutish, and short idea.
Well, there's debate about how much conflict actually existed in those early societies. Some argue that warfare was common, while others believe it became more prevalent later on with agriculture and settled societies.
So was it all just singing Kumbaya around the campfire then?
Not necessarily. There is evidence of violence and conflict, but it's difficult to say how widespread it was. A spear point could be used for hunting or for fighting. The archaeological record is incomplete. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
I see what you mean. It's hard to judge an entire society based on limited evidence.
Precisely. But one thing's for sure, Homo sapiens even back then had a major impact on the environment. Harari highlights a pretty sobering example, the extinction of megafauna in Australia.
Wait, hold on. Giant kangaroos?
Giant kangaroos, wombats the size of cars. Incredible creatures roamed Australia until Homo sapiens showed up. Their disappearance coincided with our arrival, which leads to theories about overhunting playing a role.
So we've been disrupting ecosystems for a long time now. That's kind of depressing.
It's a reminder of our impact on the planet, but it also shows how adaptable and resourceful we are. And that leads us to another major turning point in the Sapiens story, the agricultural revolution.
Ah, the good old days of farming. Goodbye nomadic life and hello 9 to 5 in the fields.
Not quite that straightforward. Harari explains that agriculture wasn't a sudden discovery, but a gradual process that changed everything. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows either. He actually calls it a trap.
A trap? What kind of trap? Like a buy one, get one free sale on wheat we couldn't resist.
I wish. It's more like this agriculture did bring us more food, allowing for larger settled populations. But it also meant more work, less varied diets, and a whole new set of problems, like dependence on specific crops, vulnerability to weather, and competition for land.
Sounds like it might not have been the best deal in the long run. So why did we stick with it if it was such a trap?
That's where the luxury trap analysis comes in. Think about it. Once you get used to a certain level of comfort, it's hard to go back. Imagine giving up your smartphone and going back to a rotary phone.
I don't even want to think about it.
Right. So while hunter-gatherers may have had more leisure time and a more diverse diet, the stability and potential surplus of agriculture was a lure we couldn't resist.
And this shift to agriculture set the stage for everything that came after, right?
Absolutely. Larger populations, settled villages, the need to manage resources and people. All of this led to more complex social structures, specialized skills, and
Just
eventually...
civilization as we know it. But wait, there's this really interesting archaeological site that Harari talks about, Göbekli Tepe. What's so special about it?
Göbekli Tepe is a real head-scratcher for historians. It's a massive complex with these incredibly intricate stone carvings. And get this, it was built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture became widespread.
Wow, so they were building these massive structures while still hunting and gathering. That's impressive.
It suggests that organized religion and complex social structures may have developed earlier than we thought, possibly even influencing the shift towards agriculture. It challenges our traditional understanding of history.
Mind-blowing. So we've got agriculture, we've got complex societies developing. What's the next big step in the Sapiens saga?
Well, as these societies grew, they needed ways to keep track of things. Grain harvests, livestock taxes, you name it. That's where the next chapter begins with the evolution of writing and numbers, the information age, Stone Age style.
Bring on the clay tablets and papyrus scrolls. I'm ready to see how our ancestors handled data entry before spreadsheets.
You might be surprised. Early writing wasn't about poetry or philosophical debates. It was all about bureaucracy. Endless lists of grain transactions, tax records. It was the ancient equivalent of receipts and invoices.
So even back then, people were obsessed with paperwork. Some things never change.
It seems that way. But Harari points out that this development was actually revolutionary. It allowed for more efficient data processing, leading to complex trade networks, centralized governments, and ultimately empires.
And empires need money, right? So I'm guessing that's where those imagined realities we were talking about earlier really come into play.
You got it. And it all started with something surprisingly simple, barley.
Barley.
Yeah.
Like the stuff in soup.
Exactly. The Sumerians, those clever folks who gave us writing, also figured out how to use barley as currency. It was the world's first standardized system of money.
So my beer money has ancient roots. Who knew?
History is full of surprises. From barley, we eventually moved on to coins, paper money, and the complex financial systems we have today. But at its core, it's still about trust belief and those shared imagined realities that connect us.
Wow, we've covered so much already. From coexisting with other human species to inventing money and the rise of empires. Yep. My brain is officially doing a workout.
We're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover in Sapiens. The rise of monotheism, the scientific revolution, and the mind-blowing possibilities of the future. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. So from barley money and early empires, let's move on to another really important chapter in human history, the rise of empires. These vast, sprawling entities, I mean, they've left a lasting mark on our world, haven't they? They shaped cultures, languages, even our modern political landscape.
Empires, they conjure up these images of Like grand palaces and epic battles and powerful rulers. It's all very dramatic.
It's definitely captivating stuff.
Right.
But Harari wants us to look beyond the spectacle and really consider the impact empires have had on the course of human history. I mean, they weren't just about military power. They were also vehicles for spreading ideas, technologies, belief systems.
So they weren't just conquering land. They were also spreading culture and knowledge.
Right.
Like ancient globalization in a way.
Exactly. Think of the Roman Empire, for example. It wasn't just about legions and gladiators. It was also about spreading Roman law architecture, their language, across vast stretches of Europe and beyond.
But empires weren't exactly known for being gentle, were they? There was probably a lot of convincing going on with those legions backing them up.
You're right. There was a lot of persuasion involved. Harari points out how empires often used ideologies to justify their rule. Whether it was the mandate of heaven in China or the mission to spread civilization in Rome, it was a way to legitimize their power and convince everyone that their dominance was for the best.
I can just imagine the conquered people rolling their eyes at that. But I suppose history is written by the victors, as they say.
Unfortunately, that's often true. But amidst all the conquest and power struggles, there's also a fascinating story of cultural exchange happening. Syncretism, Harari calls it. It's the blending of different religions, ideas, practices within empires, like a giant cultural melting pot.
That makes sense. When you have so many different cultures coming together under one rule, there's bound to be some mixing and matching going on, like the Roman Empire adopting Christianity, which itself was a blend of Jewish tradition and new ideas, or Buddhism absorbing elements of local beliefs as it spread along the Silk Road.
Exactly. Empires might have started with conquest, but they often ended up fostering a surprising amount of cultural diversity.
It's like a silver lining to the whole empire thing, I guess.
And speaking of blending and adapting, let's shift gears to another fascinating area that Harari delves into: religion. He takes us on this journey through the rise of monotheism and its impact on the world, showing how this belief in one all-powerful God took root and spread across so many different cultures.
Monotheism. One God, creator of everything. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But knowing humans and their love for a good story, I have a feeling there's more to it.
You're definitely right. Harari points out the irony of polytheistic elements surviving within monotheistic religions. For instance, the saints in Christianity, they're often revered and prayed to for intercession, which echoes practices of polytheistic religions with multiple gods and goddesses.
So some old habits die hard, even when we embrace a whole new way of thinking about the divine, humans and their rituals.
Indeed. And Harari also discusses the enduring appeal of dualistic religions, those that believe in two opposing forces, good and evil. It offers a different way of explaining the problem of evil in the world, a question that's puzzled people for centuries.
Yeah, that whole, if God is all good and all powerful, why is there suffering question? It's a tough one.
It is. Dualistic religions explain evil by attributing it to a separate force that opposes good. It's a powerful narrative that helps make sense of the complexities of human experience.
It's like this cosmic battle between good and evil playing out here on Earth. A bit like a superhero movie.
You could say that. But even within monotheism, Harari highlights how different belief systems often borrow and adapt from each other. It seems religions are always evolving and changing, just like empires.
Influenced by the cultures and societies they encounter.
Precisely. Whether it's incorporating local deities or blending philosophical ideas, religions are rarely static. They're dynamic systems of belief shaped by human experience.
So let's jump ahead a bit. We've gone from agriculture to empires and the spread of religions. How does Harari explain the modern era? How do we go from chariots and scrolls to smartphones and the internet?
Well, that's where science and capitalism enter the picture. Harari argues that these two forces have become the dominant drivers of progress and change in the modern world. They've shaped our societies, our economies, even our understanding of ourselves.
Science and capitalism. Two pillars of the modern world. But I'm guessing there's a but coming here. Harari doesn't just portray them as purely positive forces, right?
You're catching on. He acknowledges the immense power of science, but emphasizes that it's not neutral. It's always embedded within a specific cultural and ideological context.
Meaning that it's not just about discovering new knowledge, but how that knowledge is used and who gets to use it. I can see how that gets ethically tricky.
Absolutely. He uses some stark examples to illustrate this, like the development of the atomic bomb or genetically modified organisms. These breakthroughs have the potential to reshape the world, but they also raise big ethical questions about our responsibility.
It's like we're grappling with the duality of human ingenuity.
Right.
Amazing potential for both good and bad.
It's a heavy burden. And then there's capitalism, which Harari describes as a modern religion with growth as its central dogma. It's fascinating how this idea of constant economic expansion has become so ingrained in us. It drives our economies, industries, even our personal goals.
Capitalism, the pursuit of profit, the endless desire for more, it's a powerful force. But a modern religion, how so? Does that mean we worship money?
Not exactly, but he does draw parallels between religious faith and our belief in the capitalist system. He argues that capitalism relies on trust, belief, shared narratives, just like religion. We believe in the value of money, the power of the market, the idea that economic growth benefits everyone.
So it's not just about the money itself, but the beliefs and stories that hold the whole system together.
Exactly. He uses this amusing story of Samuel Greedy's bank to explain this. Samuel Greedy, this fictional banker, figures out he can lend more money than he has, creating money out of thin air as long as people trust him in the system.
It's like a financial magic trick.
Right, but with real consequences if the illusion is shattered. And Harari doesn't shy away from the potential downsides of capitalism. He talks about the ecological impact of constant growth, the gap between rich and poor, the risk of instability.
So we've got science pushing the boundaries of what's possible and capitalism driving the global economy. Feels like humanity is at this crossroads, facing amazing opportunities but also potential dangers. What does Harari see for the future? What's next in this grand story?
This is where things get really interesting. He takes us into the future, exploring the potential of bioengineering artificial intelligence, the possibility of a transhumanist revolution, a future where the lines between human and machine, natural and artificial get blurry.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Bioengineering, transhumanism. This is starting to sound like science fiction. Okay, so we're talking bioengineering, transhumanism, a future where we can redesign ourselves. It's like Sapiens is turning into a sci-fi novel.
Yeah. It does have that feel, doesn't it? But Harari's point is that this sci-fi future might be closer than we think. He introduces this fluorescent green rabbit named Alba as a symbol of this new world. Alba wasn't a product of natural selection. She was genetically engineered by scientists who implanted a gene from a jellyfish into her DNA.
A glowing green bunny that's both adorable and kind of freaky. Are we talking designer babies next? Superhumans with enhanced abilities?
Harari explores those possibilities. Imagine curing diseases like Alzheimer's or cancer with genetic engineering, or enhancing our cognitive abilities, boosting our immune systems, maybe even slowing down aging.
Hold on a second. This is getting into some serious ethical territory. Who gets to decide what makes a better human? And what happens when we start messing with our genetic code? It feels like opening Pandora's box.
It's a huge responsibility with huge implications. Harari doesn't give us easy answers, but he wants us to really think critically about these advancements. He even brings up the possibility of bringing back extinct species like Neanderthals.
Bringing back Neanderthals. Wow, that's mind-blowing, but also a bit creepy. What would a Neanderthal think of our world today?
It's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it? It makes us question what it means to be human. Are we defined by our genes, our culture, our experiences? If we can redesign ourselves, are we still the same species?
This is getting pretty philosophical.
That's what makes Sapiens so thought-provoking. It's not just a history book. It's a journey through these big questions that have always been with us. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going?
I have to say, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, but also inspired. Harari has given me a whole new perspective on history, on humanity, even on our place in the universe.
It's definitely a book that challenges us to think differently, and that's the mark of a truly great book. It sparks our curiosity, it makes us question what we thought we knew, and it leaves us wanting to explore further.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Sapiens. We've traveled from the very beginnings of humankind to the edge of a future that's both exciting and a bit scary.
Yeah.
Who knows what's next? Maybe we'll be uploading our consciousness into the cloud or colonizing other planets or even living alongside sentient AI.
The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this journey so captivating. But as Harari reminds us, the future isn't something that just happens to us. We create it through our choices and our actions.
Very true. So let's choose wisely. If you're as intrigued by all of this as we are, we highly recommend picking up Sapiens. It's a book that will stick with you long after you've finished reading it.
And who knows? Maybe in a few years, we'll do another deep dive into Homo Deus Harari's sequel that explores the future of humanity even further. But until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those brains buzzing.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through human history. We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.